Hi, welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. Glad to have you join the program. We have covered a lot of ground today and love to have you join the conversation about these topics we've addressed today. 888-589-8840. Number to call, 888-589-8840. Now, the left has been at war against the Second Amendment. Again, you look at the way the left thinks. If you defend the First Amendment, you are an angel from heaven. If you defend the Second Amendment, you are a demon from hell. And here's Eric Holder. This is 1995. He's the current chief guy at the Department of Justice, the Attorney General. He's signing up for another tour of duty. Other members of Obama's cabinet are leaving. They're retired. The Secretary of Labor, Hilda Solis, she's gone. By the way, Jack Lew, the new Treasury Secretary, you ought to take a look at his signature sometimes. That thing is bizarre. It's just a whole series of circles. And by the way, going back to the last segment, by the way, there's the dreaded words. Going back to the last segment, Jeff Reed has posted on our Facebook page, the Focal Point Facebook page, the link to the full audio of that 9/11 call with that shooting in the attic or the crawl space in Georgia. So here's Eric Holder, 1995. This guy's Department of Justice. I mean, this sounds like Vietnam. This sounds like re-education camps. Let's listen.
One thing that I think is clear with young people and with adults as well is that we just have to be repetitive about this. It's not enough to simply have a catchy ad on a Monday and then only do it every Monday. We need to do this every day of the week and just really brainwash people into thinking about guns in a vastly different way.
So, got to brainwash people. That's Eric Holder, Department of Justice, doing the Vietnam, Communist China thing. We got to brainwash young people into thinking about guns in a vastly different way. Vastly different way than what? A vastly different way than George Washington thought about guns. Vastly different way than Sam Adams thought about guns. Vastly different way than Thomas Jefferson thought about guns. And because that's just, and see, he recognizes, look, this is part of the soul of America. It's in our DNA. If you're going to get that out of them, you're going to have to brainwash them to get it done. 888-589-8840. Now, Piers Morgan has been going on and on and on. I mean, he has a Second Amendment advocate on his program, it seems like every single night. And he's on with a Daily Beast columnist by the name of Buzz Bissinger, and they speculate. Alex Jones is a talk show host. He's kind of a conspiracy guy, believes that 9/11 was an inside job, which is one of the reasons why I didn't play any sound bites from his altercation with Piers Morgan. But he was a fierce advocate for the Second Amendment. And it was a very contentious interview. Maybe you saw excerpts of it. Anyway, so this Bissinger's on with Piers Morgan to talk about his showdown with Alex Jones, and their conversation goes in an interesting direction.
The NRA and the others get on television, spread all the fear, Wayne LaPierre and Alex Jones and others, and then the Americans rush out and buy ever more of these weapons and ever more of this ammunition. And so it goes on. And the only solution is apparently to arm everybody else.
I mean, I agree with you. I mean, I think the purchase of guns went up after Sandy Hook. Look, it is pathetic. It is ridiculous that you are allowed, I don't care what the justification is, that you are allowed in this country to own a semi-automatic weapon, much less a handgun. But what do you need a semi-automatic weapon for? The only reason I think you need it is, Pierce, challenge Alex Jones to a boxing match, show up with a semi-automatic that you got legally, and pop.
Okay, so that's the thinking of the left. Everybody should give up their guns. Nobody ought to have handguns. Nobody ought to have semi-automatic weapons. Even the mom in the attic with 2 kids, she shouldn't have a handgun. She shouldn't have a semi-automatic weapon. But you, Piers Morgan, we ought to let you have one, just so when Alex Jones shows up, you can put a bullet in his brains. And here is clip 11. Here's Piers Morgan. We apparently are having problems with our phone software, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. So if you're trying to call and can't get through, our apologies. We seem to be have a glitch there with the caller software or the computers. So here's Piers Morgan talking about his frustration. He's been talking to people that defend and believe in the Second Amendment all week, and he has had it up to here. Let's listen.
I'm so frustrated. I'm so furious that these kids have been blown away again with legally acquired weapons. Some boy who's got problems takes his mother's 3 weapons, including this ridiculous assault rifle, and goes into school and kills his kids. And you guys on the gun lobby still want to tell me the answer is more guns.
Look, it is mad. It's madness. So Piers Morgan is just absolutely beside himself. You know, and he'll talk about how the homicide rate is lower in Britain, and that's absolutely right. He is absolutely correct. The homicide rate has always been much lower in the UK than it is here. And that's a cultural thing. I'm not sure I understand that, but that's just a simple fact of history. However, Randy Lucius, who's the one that prepares our video clips here, he pointed out to me that the rate of violent crime in England is 3.5 times higher than it is in the United States. So the homicide rate, that's one part of the picture, but the violent crime rate, and that includes things like assault, it includes things like theft, it includes things like armed robbery, includes things like burglary. Those violent crimes are 3.5 times in the UK the rate that they occur in the United States. Now let's go down to clip 15 if we can, Rob. This is a writer for the New York Times by the name of Charles Blow. And here's the deal. This guy doesn't even realize what he's saying. You know, I sent a tweet out the other day that atheists, an honest atheist, is somebody who does not believe in God, but is glad that a lot of people around him do. Because if he's willing to be honest, he knows that there's a benefit to society when you have people that believe in God. There's a restraint there. There is a self-control there. There is a set of standards and guardrails for society that are good. And he benefits from people who believe in God, even though he does not. So he's glad to have him around. I found out yesterday George Will, criminally, George Will is an atheist. I didn't know that. George Will doesn't believe in God. But he understands the importance of religion in the United States of America, and specifically the importance of Christianity. So George Will is a guy that says, look, I'm not a Christian. I don't want to be a Christian. I don't believe in God. I don't want to believe in God. I don't want to have any relationship with God. But thank God that we have people around me who do, because America needs them. That's what's made America what it is today, is people who believe in God and Christianity and the Bible. That's George Will saying that. They don't even believe in God, but he's really glad that a whole lot of people around him do. Now here's Charles Blow, and he doesn't even realize what he's admitting here. Let's play the clip.
I think when we talk about gun control and we only talk about gun owners as the only people involved in that equation, that is the wrong frame. Well, you have a right to own a gun. I have a right to not own a gun and still feel safe in this society. And the fact that we are not having the discussion that incorporates the people who choose to not have a gun in this society and want to be safe in that same society. And that's where you believe. And that's the frame.
So he's saying, look, I want to not have a gun and yet feel safe. Now, the only way that can happen, Charles Blow of the New York Times, is if people around you have guns. If people around you have guns, then you might be able to be safe even though you don't have one. But if nobody around you has guns, you are not going to feel safe. So a guy doesn't even realize what he's saying. Here's Joe Scarborough, clip 16. This guy is claims to be a Republican. He actually served in the Congress as a Republican, but this guy is all over the map. And he says something that's absolutely, completely wrong here. And let me set it up this way. Ladies and gentlemen, the First Amendment and the Second Amendment do not need to be limited. They only need to be understood and applied. We don't need to limit them. They're fine just like they are. We just need to understand them, and we need to apply them. Here's what Joe Scarborough thinks, however, about the First and Second Amendment.
I've been getting some criticism by extremists on the right for saying that we got to look at the magazines, the high-capacity magazines. We've got to look at the assault weapons, and we've got to ban some of these things. But I will tell you, I found most, again, of my conservative friends and supporters agree. These people don't need, these survivalists don't need assault weapons. They don't need these high-capacity clips. I've been getting a lot more grief, Chris, from liberals who say, they'll say the Second Amendment is not absolute. But then you talk about movies You talk about, porn violence, which is what it is. You talk about video games. They go crazy and basically accuse you of burning the American flag and ripping the Constitution to shred. And they are the absolutist nuts on the First Amendment, which you and I know because we sat through law school, time, place, manner. We understand there are limits to the First Amendment. There need to be limits to the First Amendment and there are. And there need to be limits to the Second Amendment. Yeah. And there are.
Now, he's just wrong about that. The only limits in the First Amendment and the Second Amendment are the limits that are in the amendments themselves. We don't need to limit them. We don't need to come in from the outside and limit them. We just need to understand them and apply them. He talks about the fact that his friends are absolutists, he calls them, when it comes to the First Amendment, saying that the First Amendment protects pornography. We've been over this before. It does not. It does no such thing. So they're saying they're absolutists. We absolutely believe in the First Amendment. They believe in a caricature of the First Amendment. They believe in a First Amendment that does not even exist, because what the founders were protecting was the right to freedom of political speech, robust political debate. They had no intention of providing protection for pornography, obscenity, vulgarity, or profanity of any sort. They would just be absolutely blown away to see the way in which the First Amendment has been prostituted to defend behavior that they would have considered perfectly reprehensible and contrary to all public policy. And they would also be blown away at the way in which people are using the Second Amendment to prohibit behavior which they understood were absolutely necessary for the security of a free state. Well, that's it for today. May the God who gives endurance and encouragement give you a spirit of unity among yourselves as you follow Christ Jesus, so that with one heart and one mouth we may glorify the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. Bow low before God, stand tall before man, stand in the gap, and never forget, ladies and gentlemen, we are fighting a winnable war. See you tomorrow.
The views